"Dad, you're in the way." Harold Bennett heard it from the hallway. Not from a stranger. Not from a nurse. From his own daughter. He stood still beside the half-closed pantry door, one hand resting on the frame, while Claire's voice dropped into that tired, irritated tone adult children use when they think age has turned their parents deaf. Jason sighed in agreement. And just like that, a man who had once led frightened boys through gunfire was being discussed like an old recliner nobody wanted to throw out. Harold did not walk in. He did not ask what she meant. He did not defend himself. He simply looked down at the paper bag in his hand. A loaf of bread, a can of soup, the kind Claire liked when she had a cold. He had walked 3 blocks to buy them because he hated feeling useless in a house that no longer felt like his. Then he turned around and went quietly back to his room. That should have been the end of it. But some words do not stop when the room goes silent. They follow you. They sit beside you. They wait. That night, long after the dishes were done and the television downstairs had gone dark, Harold opened the narrow closet by the window. From the back, beneath old winter blankets and a cardboard box of Christmas lights, he pulled out a faded army coat. He had not worn it in years. The wool was rough under his fingers. The brass buttons had dulled. One cuff was frayed. But when he slipped it on, slowly, carefully, the coat still carried the shape of the man he used to be. A man who was never in the way. He lowered himself into the chair by the window and stared into the dark yard. The porch light from the neighbor's house spilled across the dead grass. Somewhere far off, a dog barked once, then quit. Inside the room, the silence grew heavy. He could still hear Claire. "Dad, you're in the way." Not, "You need help." Not, "We're worried about you." In the way. As if his life had become a piece of furniture blocking a doorway. And the truth was, Harold had seen it coming. It was in the little things first. The way Claire stopped asking if he wanted coffee and started saying, "You probably shouldn't have caffeine." The way Jason came by less often, but always had something to say about bills, medication, insurance, space. The way Megan, Jason's wife, smiled too quickly whenever she talked about what's practical. Nobody shouted. Nobody slammed a fist on the table. That would have been easier. No, this was worse. This was the slow, polite erasing of a man from his own family. And the hardest part? Harold had spent most of his life making sure those same people would never feel abandoned. He leaned back, his hand brushing the coat pocket. Something crackled. At first, he thought it was old paper, maybe a receipt, maybe a church bulletin from years ago. He reached inside and pulled out a worn business card. The edges were bent, the lettering had faded, but the name was still there. Eleanor Price, attorney at law. Harold stared at it a long time. He had not seen that name in nearly 20 years. For a moment, the room around him seemed to pull backward. The dark window, the chair, the ache in his knees, all of it faded behind an older memory. A cleaner office, a quiet promise. Papers signed without ceremony. A woman across a desk telling him, "One day, this may matter more than you think." He slipped the card into his palm and closed his fingers around it. Downstairs, a floorboard creaked. Voices. Not loud this time. Careful, controlled. Harold rose from the chair and moved toward the door. He did not open it all the way. Just enough. Claire was in the kitchen. Jason stood by the counter with his car keys in one hand. Megan leaned against the sink. "I'm just saying this can't go on," Claire whispered. "I can't keep my whole life on hold." Jason rubbed his jaw. "Then do it. Call the place." Harold went still. Claire looked down at a brochure on the counter. Even from the hallway, he could make out the smiling gray-haired couple on the front. A nursing facility. Clean rooms. Garden access. 24-hour care. Jason lowered his voice even more. "It's not cruel. It's realistic." Megan folded her arms. And honestly, he might be happier there. Around people his own age. People his own age. As if loneliness could be cured by being stacked in a building with other discarded parents. Harold waited for one of them to say something different. Something human. Maybe he deserves better than that. Maybe we owe him more time. Maybe ask him what he wants. But no one did. Claire exhaled through her nose. I can't keep rearranging everything around him." Jason answered, "Then stop." And Harold stepped back before the floor could betray him. He returned to his room and shut the door without a sound. For several seconds, he stood there in the army coat, the business card in his hand, listening to the soft hum of the house. The refrigerator downstairs. a faucet turning on. Then laughter. Not cruel laughter, just ordinary laughter. That hurt most of all, because pain always feels heavier when the people causing it still think they're decent. Harold sat again, slower this time. He looked at the card, then at the coat, then at his own hands. Those hands had buried friends, built a crib, fixed engines in the winter cold, signed checks nobody knew about, held a feverish child through the night, lifted, carried, repaired, provided. Now his daughter said he was in the way. A weaker man might have cried, a louder man might have stormed downstairs. Harold did neither. He reached for the phone on the small table by the bed. He turned the business card over. There, in faint blue ink, was a second number written by hand. His thumb hovered over it. Outside, the wind moved softly through the trees. Inside, something old and steady woke up in his chest. Not anger, something colder, something clearer. Harold dialed the first 3 numbers, then stopped when he heard footsteps outside his door. He placed the phone down without making the call. The footsteps passed. The house quieted again. He picked the phone back up. This time, he dialed the entire number. When the line began to ring, Harold Bennett sat straight in that old military coat, his face calm, his eyes fixed on the dark window. And for the first time in a very long while, he was no longer just enduring what came next. He was preparing for it. The call was answered on the 4th ring. A woman's voice, older, professional, careful. Law office of Eleanor Price. Harold said nothing for a second. It had been too many years, too many quiet decisions, too much time spent pretending the past was finished. Then he gave his name. The silence on the other end changed. Not confusion, recognition. "Mr. Bennett," the woman said softly, "I didn't expect to hear your voice tonight." Harold looked toward the door. No one upstairs, no footsteps, no one asking if he needed anything. "I need to know if Miss Price is still practicing." A pause. "She is. Limited schedule now. Why?" Harold let his fingers rest on the edge of the table. His hands looked older at night. The veins stood out more. The skin looked thinner, but they were still steady. "I may need to see her." The woman lowered her voice, as if she understood that some conversations should not travel through walls. "I'll let her know you called." Harold thanked her and hung up. That was all. No threats, no speech, no dramatic move, just a door cracked open after years of silence. He took off the coat, folded it neatly, and set it across the chair. Then he sat in the dark a little longer, staring at the phone like it had brought a former life into the room. By morning, the house had gone back to normal. Claire was already dressed for work. Her heels clicked across the kitchen tile. Jason had left a coffee mug in the sink. Megan's voice drifted from the living room, talking to someone on speakerphone about school pickup and grocery prices. Ordinary sounds. That was what made the cruelty so hard to hold. Not every betrayal comes with yelling. Sometimes it comes while bacon sizzles in a pan. Harold entered the kitchen quietly. Claire glanced at him, then at the clock. "There's oatmeal," she said. "Microwave it another 30 seconds if it's cold." No good morning, no eye contact, just instructions. Harold nodded and sat down. On the refrigerator door were photographs from another life, school portraits, a beach trip from years ago, Jason in a Little League uniform, Claire in a graduation gown. One old photo near the top had yellowed at the corners. It showed Harold much younger, standing in uniform with both children pressed against his sides, smiling as if nothing in the world could pull that family apart. Claire followed his eyes. "I keep meaning to organize those," she said. Harold looked back at his bowl. No rush, but inside, the picture stayed with him. He remembered that day. Claire had cried because his jacket buttons were too shiny and made him look too important. Jason had climbed on his boots and asked if soldiers ever got scared. Harold had told him the truth. Yes, Jason had frowned. Then how did they keep going? Harold had said, because someone has to. Back then, the boy had looked at him like that answer meant something. Back then, both of them did. He ate in silence, but memory kept talking. He remembered double shifts after coming home from service. He remembered sleeping in a chair by the furnace because the heat was failing and the children's rooms were colder than the hallway. He remembered wrapping Claire's birthday bicycle with his own hands because he could not afford store assembly. He remembered Jason's asthma medicine lined up on the bathroom shelf, the winter he worked nights and mornings just to keep insurance from lapsing. He remembered what it cost to make childhood feel safe. The children never saw those costs in full. They only saw dinner on the table, the lights staying on, shoes replaced before the soles gave out, tuition checks arriving on time. Love, to Harold, had never been loud. It had been paid in installments. Claire snapped shut her purse. "I'll be late." She moved toward the door, then stopped. "There's chicken in the fridge for lunch," she said. "Don't use the oven." Another instruction, another small surrender. Harold gave a faint nod. After she left, he remained at the table, staring at the old photograph. His reflection faintly covered the faces in the refrigerator door, a younger father underneath, an older burden on top. By noon, Jason came by. He did not knock. Family never does when they still think they belong everywhere. He walked in with his phone in hand and tension already sitting on his face. "You doing okay?" he asked. It sounded polite, but hurried, like a line said out of duty. "I'm fine," Harold said. Jason nodded, not really listening. He paced once through the kitchen, opened the fridge, closed it, ran a hand over his chin. Harold had seen that look before. Years ago, when Jason was 23 and had maxed out 2 credit cards trying to impress people he barely knew. Again at 31, when his business partner disappeared and left him holding the debt. Again when he called Harold at midnight saying, "Dad, I just need a little time." Harold had never reminded him how often a little time came with a bill. Jason leaned against the counter. "Claire's under a lot of pressure," he said. "You know that, right?" Harold looked at him carefully. "Do you?" Jason exhaled, almost annoyed by the question. "I'm just saying things are complicated." That word again. Complicated. A word people use when they want mercy without responsibility. Harold folded his hands. "I see." Jason glanced at him, maybe expecting an argument, maybe hoping for one. But Harold gave him nothing. That seemed to bother Jason more. He pushed off the counter and started toward the hall, then turned back. "There are places now," he said. "Good places, not like years ago." Harold did not answer. Jason nodded to himself as if silence were permission, then left. The front door shut. A minute later, Harold rose and walked to the sink. Outside, a delivery truck rolled past the house. Somewhere next door, a mower started up. The world went on trimming hedges and dropping packages, while inside this kitchen, a family was slowly deciding what to do with its father. The phone rang at 2:17. Harold picked it up on the second ring. "Mr. Bennett," the same woman said. "Miss Price would like to see you, tomorrow morning, privately." Harold's eyes lifted. "Tomorrow?" "Yes, she said to tell you not to discuss anything in the house before then." Harold held the phone a little tighter. "Thank you." When he hung up, he stood very still. So, Eleanor remembered enough to be careful. That told him more than words could. But before he could think any further, the back door opened. Claire came in with a paper bag, set it on the counter, and pulled out a folded brochure. Her face had that rehearsed calm people wear when they have already made a decision and only need to dress it in kindness. She looked at Harold and forced a small smile. "Dad," she said, "there's something we need to talk about at dinner." Harold looked down. The brochure showed a brick building, white curtains, smiling seniors in a sunlit courtyard. At the top, in soft blue letters, were the words, "A room is available now." He said nothing. But that evening, when the plates were set and Jason arrived 5 minutes late, Harold slipped Eleanor Price's business card into his pocket and took his seat at the table. Because whatever his children were about to say next, they were no longer the only ones preparing. Dinner was already on the table when Harold came in. Roast chicken, green beans, mashed potatoes from a box. The kind of meal meant to look comforting. The kind people serve when they are about to say something cruel and want the plates to soften it. Claire sat at the head of the table, though it had once been Harold's seat. Jason was to her right. Megan sat beside him, hands folded, face arranged into concern. Nobody reached for the food. Nobody said grace. Claire looked at Harold and gave him a small practiced smile. "Dad," she said, "we want to talk about what's best going forward." There it was. Not "what do you want?" Not "how are you feeling?" What's best going forward? Harold pulled out his chair and sat down slowly. He placed his napkin in his lap. His face gave them nothing. Claire slid the brochure across the table. The same smiling building, the same trimmed hedges, the same promise of comfort printed in soft, harmless colors. "It's a very nice place," she said. "Clean, close by, good staff." Jason nodded. We checked. Harold rested one hand beside his plate. You checked. Claire's throat moved. Yes. Harold looked from one face to the next. Then he asked the question none of them wanted to hear. Have you already decided? For one long second, nobody answered. That silence told him everything. Megan was the first to jump in. We're only discussing options, she said quickly. Nobody's forcing anything. But her voice had the careful tone of someone standing near a lie and hoping not to touch it directly. Claire leaned forward. Dad, this house isn't set up for what you need now. Harold said nothing. She kept going. There are stairs. You need help with things. I'm working full-time. I can't keep leaving early or changing my schedule every time something comes up. Every time something comes up. He almost asked her what she meant by that. The morning he fell and got up before she noticed. The doctor's visit he told her not to miss work for. The groceries he still bought with his own money. But Harold had lived long enough to know this was not really about events. It was about inconvenience. Jason picked up the brochure and tapped the front with one finger. They've got nurses there, activities, people your age. It wouldn't be so bad. Wouldn't be so bad. As if a father could be relocated with the same language people use for a used car or a storage unit. Harold looked at his son. Jason held the stare for 2 seconds, then dropped it. That was when Harold knew. Jason was not here because he believed this was right. He was here because he needed it to happen. The room stayed quiet long enough for the refrigerator to hum in the next room. Then Claire said the part she had probably rehearsed all afternoon. We can't keep living like this. Not you can't. We can't. A family verdict. Harold reached for his water glass but did not drink. His eyes drifted just for a moment to the counter behind Claire. There was a folder there. Not the brochure. A folder, partly open. Inside it, he could see printed pages. A real estate letterhead. A form with highlighted lines. Another page clipped behind it. He did not stare long. He did not need to. The shape of it was enough. This conversation had started before dinner. Maybe before today. Maybe before the brochure ever touched the table. Claire followed his eyes and turned slightly in her chair. Too late. She rose and moved the folder aside with casual speed. Dad, she said, sitting down again, please don't make this harder than it has to be. Harold looked at her for a long moment. Then he asked, very quietly, harder for who? That landed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but it landed. Claire's face tightened. Jason shifted in his chair. Megan reached for her water. For the first time that night, no one had a polished sentence ready. Jason tried next. Look, nobody's saying we don't care. Harold turned to him. Aren't you? Jason's jaw set. That's not fair. Fair. Harold almost smiled at the word. Fair was a son calling at midnight, desperate and ashamed, and his father wiring money by morning without telling a soul. Fair was a daughter getting through college without ever knowing the mortgage had nearly slipped twice that same year. Fair was a man growing old in a family he had built, only to be told there was no room left for him inside it. But Harold did not say any of that. He let the silence work for him. Megan cleared her throat. Maybe we should all calm down. Harold looked at her. She gave him the same soft expression she always wore when she wanted something to sound reasonable. We're trying to be practical, she said. That's all. Practical. Another clean word, another bloodless word. Words like practical and realistic and best option were doing a lot of work in that room. They kept anyone from having to say what this really was. You take up space, you cost energy, you remind us that duty has a weight, and we no longer want to carry it. Claire finally pushed her plate away. The truth is, she said, I need my life back. There it was, not the polished version, the real one. No one moved after that. The kitchen seemed to grow smaller. Even Jason looked at her, surprised she had said it out loud. Harold lowered his eyes to the tablecloth. His voice, when it came, was calm. I didn't realize I'd taken it. Claire's face changed then. For a flicker of a second, guilt made it through. But only for a second, because guilt is uncomfortable, and some people would rather turn colder than sit inside it. She folded her hands. We can arrange a visit this week. Not can we. Can arrange. Jason looked relieved that the conversation had moved back into safer language. Harold leaned back in his chair. He could feel Eleanor's card in his pocket, a small rectangle of old paper, light as nothing, heavy as truth. He rose without touching the food. I'm tired, he said. Claire looked up. But Harold was already turning away. No slammed door, no broken voice, no scene. That seemed to unsettle them more than anger would have. In the hallway, he paused just long enough to glance once more toward the counter. The folder was still there. This time, he caught the words near the top page. Property valuation. Below it, another phrase. Durable power of attorney. Harold said nothing. He went to his room, shut the door, and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. So that was the shape of it now. Not just a room somewhere else. Control. Paperwork. Decisions made in gentle voices before he was ever invited to the table. At 8:10 the next morning, Harold put on his old coat, slipped Eleanor Price's card into his pocket, and walked quietly toward the front door. Claire stepped out of the kitchen when she heard him. "Dad?" she said. "Where are you going?" Harold rested his hand on the doorknob. Then he looked back at her with a calm she could not read. "To take care of something," he said. And this time, he left before anyone could stop him. The morning air was cold enough to bite. Harold kept one hand in his coat pocket as he walked the sidewalk, steady but slow, toward the corner where the bus still stopped every hour. The old army coat sat heavy on his shoulders. Not because of the wool, because of what it asked him to remember. He had worn that coat in harder weather than this. He had stood in places where men learned very quickly who could be trusted and who could not. Family was supposed to be different. That was the lie hurting him most. By the time Harold reached Eleanor Price's office, his knees were aching and his breath had shortened. The building was smaller than he remembered. Brick front, brass plaque, frosted glass on the door. But the name was still there. Eleanor Price, attorney at law. Inside, the waiting room was quiet. No television, no music, just a lamp in the corner and the soft sound of pages turning somewhere behind a half-closed door. The receptionist stood when she saw him. "Mr. Bennett?" Harold gave a small nod. She smiled in a way that felt real. Not pity, not that careful kindness people use with the elderly when they have already decided what the elderly can no longer do. "Miss Price is expecting you." She led him down a short hallway. When Eleanor rose from behind her desk, Harold saw time in her face the same way he felt it in his own bones. Her hair was white now, her frame a little smaller, but her eyes had not changed. Sharp, patient, hard to fool. She came around the desk and held out her hand. Harold, not Mr. Bennett, not Sir, Harold. The name landed deeper than he expected. He took her hand. "Eleanor." She looked at the coat, then back at him. "I always wondered if you'd wear that again." Harold gave the faintest trace of a smile. "I wondered too." She motioned to the chair across from her desk. "Sit down and tell me why you came before someone in your family realizes you left with a purpose." That sentence made Harold look at her more carefully. Eleanor noticed. "I'm old, Harold," she said, "not blind." He sat. The office smelled faintly of paper, coffee, and furniture polish. On the shelf behind her were framed certificates, a photo of a younger Eleanor beside a man in uniform, and a small wooden box Harold recognized immediately. She had kept it. That surprised him. Eleanor followed his eyes. "Yes," she said softly. "I kept that too." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Harold reached into his pocket and placed the business card on her desk. "They want to put me in a home." Eleanor did not react with shock. That told him she had heard worse. Instead, she folded her hands and asked, "And what else?" Harold looked down. "They've been discussing paperwork." "What kind?" "Property valuation. Power of attorney." Eleanor leaned back. "Did they ask you to sign anything?" "Not yet." "Have they shown you any documents?" "No." She nodded once, almost to herself. "So they're still in the arranging phase." Harold let out a slow breath. The words hurt because they sounded accurate. Not a daughter overwhelmed, not a son confused. An arrangement. Eleanor opened a file drawer and pulled out a folder so old the tab had yellowed. She set it on the desk between them. Harold recognized his own signature before she even opened it. He had not seen that folder in nearly 20 years. "You remember this?" she asked. "I remember enough." She opened it carefully. Inside were copies of documents, trust papers, deeds, letters, instructions written in plain, restrained language, the kind Harold had always preferred. No drama, no flourish, just decisions. Eleanor adjusted her glasses and looked up at him. "When your wife passed, you told me you wanted two things." Harold said nothing. "You wanted your children protected," she continued, "and you wanted them protected without ever feeling owned by your help." A muscle moved in Harold's jaw. "That's still true?" He looked out the window behind her. A delivery van rolled by. Two women in winter coats passed on the sidewalk, laughing at something he could not hear. "I don't know anymore," he said. Eleanor studied him for a long moment. Then she turned a page. "Well," she said, "the law knows what's true even when families pretend not to." She began asking questions. Had Jason mentioned money recently? Yes. Had Claire said anything about selling the house? Not directly. But enough. Had Harold signed new medical directives in the last year? No. Any bank changes? New names added? Missing statements? No. The questions came clean and calm. No wasted words. Harold answered each one. And with every answer, Eleanor's face grew a little more focused. Not alarmed, prepared. Finally, she closed the folder and rested both palms on it. "Harold," she said, "listen to me carefully." He did. "No one can lawfully move you, control your property, or obtain authority over your affairs without your consent or evidence that you are legally incapable of making decisions." Harold held her gaze. "So they can't do it." "Not properly," Eleanor said. "But people do improper things when they tell themselves it's for the best." That sat between them for a second. Then she added, "Especially when money is involved." Harold looked at the edge of the desk. There it was. Not the whole truth. Just the first clean slice of it. Eleanor reopened the folder. This time, she pulled out several newer pages from beneath the older documents. Bank summaries, quiet disbursements, records arranged in neat columns. Harold frowned. "These aren't mine." "They are," Eleanor said. "They were routed through the trust office just as you instructed years ago." Harold stared at the pages. Then he saw the names. Not written boldly, not on top, buried in references and account notations. Jason Bennett, Claire Marshall Bennett. His face did not change, but Eleanor noticed the slight shift in his breathing. "You never asked for updates," she said. "You told us to release support only when necessary and keep your name out of it whenever possible." Harold kept reading. A business debt, covered, a late mortgage balance, quietly stabilized, a tax issue, resolved through counsel, small enough each one to hide inside ordinary life, large enough to change the direction of a family. Eleanor watched him absorb it. "Your children have been standing on ground you paid to keep from collapsing," she said. Harold looked up slowly. "They never knew." "No," Eleanor said, "because you made sure they wouldn't." Silence settled over the room. Not empty silence, the kind that fills with old choices. After a while, Eleanor spoke again. "There's more." Harold's eyes lifted. The requests increased in the last 18 months. Indirectly, through circumstances around them. Pressure, debt, delays. Someone has been living close to the edge. Jason, Harold thought. Maybe Claire too. Maybe both. Eleanor touched the top sheet with one finger. "If they're pressing this hard now, it may not be only about your care." Harold sat very still. The office clock ticked once, twice. Then Eleanor said, "Do you want me to intervene today?" Harold thought of the dinner table. Claire saying she needed her life back. Jason talking about what was realistic. The folder on the counter. The words property valuation. He looked at Eleanor and shook his head. "Not yet." She did not argue. "Then what do you want?" Harold's hand moved slowly over the old file. "I want to hear what they say when they think I have nothing left to protect." Eleanor leaned back. For the first time that morning, a colder expression crossed her face. "All right," she said. "Then we do this carefully." She pulled a blank pad toward her and began writing names, dates, next steps. Then she stopped, looked up, and said the one thing Harold had not expected. "You should know this too. There was a call last week." Harold's eyes narrowed. "A call?" Eleanor nodded once. Someone had questions about elder transfer for procedures, property authority, and trust exposure. Harold felt the room sharpen around him. "Who?" Eleanor held his gaze. "I think," she said quietly, "your children may already be farther along than they've admitted." Harold did not go straight home. After leaving Eleanor's office, he sat for a while on a bench across the street, the old coat buttoned up to his throat, one gloved hand resting on the cane he rarely used unless his knees demanded honesty. Cars passed. People hurried by. Nobody looked twice at the old man on the bench. That was the strange thing about getting old. You became easier to ignore, unless someone needed your signature. Harold stared at the folded copies Eleanor had placed in a plain envelope before he left. He had not opened it yet. He already knew enough to understand the shape of what had happened. Still, knowing a storm is coming is not the same as standing in it. He opened the envelope slowly. The first page was clean and simple. Trust disbursement summary. The second was not. Jason's name appeared halfway down, attached to a business debt from 6 years earlier. Harold remembered that winter. Jason had shown up with red eyes and a brave face, saying the market had turned, his partner had backed out, and he just needed time to untangle things. He had never asked Harold for the full amount. He had not needed to. The trust office had already been instructed. Quiet help. No lecture, no humiliation. Harold turned the page. Claire's name, a mortgage deficiency, 2 late quarters, quietly covered through a legal intermediary 3 years ago. Harold closed his eyes. He remembered Claire calling that spring, pretending everything was fine. Her voice had sounded too bright, too careful. She had talked about mulch for the flower beds and a broken dishwasher. She had not once mentioned the fear that had probably been sitting with her at the kitchen table. He had let her keep her pride. He had told himself that was love. Now he wondered if it had also been permission. A bus hissed to a stop at the curb. Harold folded the papers back into the envelope and rose. When he got home, Claire was on the phone in the den. Her voice dropped the second she saw him. "Yes," she said into the receiver. "I understand. We just need to know timing." She turned away as if the bookshelf behind her had become fascinating. Harold kept walking. He did not ask who it was, but later, as he passed the hallway table, he saw a notepad beside the lamp. On the top sheet, pressed deeply enough to leave an imprint, were 3 words, "Capacity Evaluation Cost." Harold stood still. He did not touch the pad. He did not need to. The cruelty was changing shape now. Not open force. Procedure, the kind that wears a polite face and tells itself it is helping. At dinner, Claire was gentler than usual. That unsettled him more than her sharpness. She asked if he wanted extra gravy. She reminded him to take his pills with food. She even smiled once, though it never reached her eyes. Jason arrived late again. Not rushed this time, agitated. His tie was crooked, his collar slightly open. He kept checking his phone under the table. Halfway through the meal, it buzzed in his hand. He glanced down, and for one brief second, the mask slipped. Fear, raw and immediate. He stood up so quickly his chair scraped the floor. "Excuse me," he muttered, already heading toward the back door. Through the kitchen window, Harold could see him pacing on the patio, one hand in his hair, the other gripping the phone so tightly his knuckles showed white. Megan went after him. Claire kept cutting her chicken into small, precise pieces. Nobody explained. Nobody had to. Pressure had found its way to the table. Later that night, Harold sat at the edge of his bed and opened the envelope again. There were more pages behind the summaries. Dates, amounts, attorney notes. One line made him stop. Tax lien exposure resolved before court filing. Jason again. Another line lower down. Short-term escrow stabilization to prevent foreclosure notice. Claire. Harold let the page lower to his lap. He was not shocked that they had struggled. Most families do. He was shocked that they could sit across from him, speak about burden and practicality and getting their lives back, while standing on years of help they had never bothered to imagine. He thought of all the times he had protected them without stepping into the spotlight. All the times he told himself dignity mattered more than gratitude. All the times he chose silence because he wanted his children to feel capable, not rescued. The room grew very quiet. Then Harold reached for the phone. Eleanor answered herself this time. "I was expecting your call," she said. Harold looked at the papers in his lap. "You were right." A pause. "I know." He let out a long breath. "They were closer to the edge than I knew." "Yes, and I kept them from falling." "You did." Harold's voice stayed level, but it had gone lower. "I never wanted them to feel ashamed." On the other end, Eleanor said nothing for a moment. Then she asked, "Do you regret that?" Harold looked toward the dark window. Inside it, he could see only his own outline, the coat hanging by the chair, the shape of an old man in a small room. "No," he said at last. "But I regret what they mistook it for." Eleanor's tone softened. "Quiet men are often misread, Harold." He gave a dry, humorless breath. "That's one way to say it." She let that sit, then moved to business. "I've placed alerts on the trust file. Nothing changes without direct confirmation from you. No transfer, no disclosure, no access." "Good. And there's something else," she added. "A care facility received a deposit inquiry this afternoon." Harold's fingers tightened on the page. "From them? It came through a family representative, not by name, but yes, I believe so." Harold looked at the closed bedroom door. So they were moving, faster now, not waiting for consent, waiting for the right moment. When? He asked. I can't prove they've signed anything yet, Eleanor said, but I would assume very soon. Harold lowered his gaze. In the hallway outside, floorboards creaked lightly. Claire moving about the house, a cabinet opening, a faucet running, small sounds. Ordinary sounds, the kind that hide extraordinary betrayal. What do you want me to do? Eleanor asked. Harold did not answer right away. Then he said, nothing yet. Eleanor was quiet. When she spoke again, her voice was firmer. Harold, they may try to corner you with paperwork, or with emotion, or both. I know. Then don't be alone when it happens. He looked at the envelope, at the names, at the years of help buried in clean columns and careful notes. Then he said, I want them to say it plainly first. Them, what they believe I am, what they want from me, all of it. Eleanor understood immediately. All right, she said. Then when the moment comes, I'll be ready. The next afternoon, Harold found Claire in the kitchen with a pen in one hand and a stack of forms under the other. She looked up too fast. Oh, she said, I was just organizing some medical paperwork. Harold's eyes moved to the top page. Physician assessment request. Below it, half covered by another sheet, were the words, resident admission packet. Claire placed her hand over the papers. Too late. Her voice came out careful, almost soothing. Dad, we're going to need to make some decisions this week. Harold held her gaze. Then, from the driveway, Jason's car door slammed. A second later, he came through the front door looking pale, sweating despite the cold, with a certified envelope crushed in his hand. He looked from Claire to Harold. And for the first time, Jason Bennett did not look like a son making plans. He looked like a man running out of time. Jason stood in the entryway like a man who had just been shoved off solid ground. The certified envelope in his hand was bent at the corners. His face had lost color. His breathing was shallow. Claire rose from the kitchen table at once. What happened? Jason looked at her, then at Harold, then back at the envelope as if the paper itself had turned against him. It's bad, he said. That was all. Not an explanation. Not yet. Just two words heavy enough to change the air in the room. Claire stepped closer and grabbed the envelope from his hand. Jason let her. That alone told Harold more than any speech could. Jason Bennett had spent half his life pretending he was still in control, even when he was drowning. But not now. Claire pulled out the papers and scanned the first page. Her lips parted, then tightened. What is this? Jason dragged a hand over his face. They're moving forward. With what? The claim. The business claim. They found the personal guarantee. Claire stared at him. I thought that was settled. Jason gave a bitter laugh with no humor in it. So did I? Harold stood quietly near the counter, one hand resting on the back of a chair. No one asked him to sit. No one remembered he was there until Claire lowered the pages and saw him watching. For 1 second, she looked embarrassed, then frightened. Jason took the papers back. If this goes through, he said, they can come after everything. Everything. The word lingered in the kitchen. Megan entered from the hallway, took one look at Jason's face, and stopped. What happened? Claire answered without looking at her. His old business mess. It's back. Megan's hand flew to her chest. No, I thought that was handled. Jason snapped, sharper than he meant to. Well, it wasn't. Silence. Then Claire did something that told Harold exactly how far they had gone. She looked at the papers in Jason's hand, then at Harold, then at the stack of forms on the table, and said, very softly, we need to move now. Harold felt that sentence settle into him like cold metal. Not we need to help, not we need to think. We need to move now. Jason looked at her, stunned. Claire lowered her voice. If we don't handle Dad's situation first, everything gets messier. Dad's situation. Harold had heard enough clean phrases in the last week to know what ugly truth they were hiding. Megan stepped in carefully. Maybe we should wait. Claire turned on her. With what money? Jason said nothing. That silence was its own confession. Harold looked from one face to the next and saw something he had not wanted to name before. Not concern, not family strain, desperation. And desperation makes decent people selfish. It makes selfish people dangerous. Claire straightened the papers on the table with hands that were trying not to shake. Dad? She said, using the patient voice people use on children and the elderly when they want obedience to sound like care. I think we should go ahead and sign a few things today. Just temporary. Just so we can protect you. Protect you. Harold almost pitied her for choosing those words. He looked at the forms: medical assessment, admission packet, power of attorney, and beneath them, partly hidden, another page he had not seen before: property consultation summary. He raised his eyes slowly. Protect me from what? Claire swallowed. From confusion, from delays, from people taking advantage. Jason looked away. Harold let that breathe for a second. Then he asked, "Is that what you believe is happening here?" No one answered, because now the lie had become too large to hold comfortably. Claire tried again. "Dad, please, we're running out of time." There it was, not running out of patience, running out of time, because this had never only been about Harold's care. It was about Jason's debt closing in, Claire's fear rising with it, and an old man they thought they could move like a final piece on the board. Harold rested both hands on the chair back and stood straighter than any of them had seen in years. "No," he said. The word was quiet. It stopped the room anyway. Claire blinked. "Dad." I said no. Jason lifted his head. Megan took one step backward, and then came the knock at the front door. 3 calm knocks, not rushed, not hesitant. Claire froze. Jason frowned. Harold did not move at all. He already knew. Megan went to open the door. Eleanor Price stepped inside wearing a dark coat, leather gloves, and the kind of expression that had probably ended arguments for 40 years. She removed one glove finger by finger and looked first at Harold, then at the table, then at the papers. "I see I arrived at the right time," she said. Claire's face changed instantly. Confusion first, then alarm. "Who is this?" Eleanor closed the door behind her. "My name is Eleanor Price. I'm Mr. Bennett's attorney." No one spoke. Even the house seemed to pause around that sentence. Jason stared. "Attorney?" Eleanor set a slim leather folder on the table beside the forms Claire had been trying to hide. "Yes," she said. "And before anyone says another word, let me make something very clear. Mr. Bennett is legally competent, fully informed, and under no obligation whatsoever to sign any document placed in front of him today." Claire's mouth opened, then closed. Megan folded her arms tightly around herself. Jason looked as though he had been hit in the chest. Eleanor turned one page in her folder. "Also," she said, "any attempt to pressure, transfer, admit, or assign authority over Mr. Wade Bennett without proper legal basis would be challenged immediately." Claire found her voice first. "We weren't doing anything wrong." Eleanor looked at her calmly. "Then you won't mind if I review what you intended him to sign." No one handed her the papers. That told its own story. Eleanor did not need permission. She lifted the top pages herself and scanned them with practiced speed. Admission packet, capacity evaluation request, power of attorney draft, property consultation notes. When she looked back up, her face did not harden. It cooled. "That's what I thought." Jason stepped forward. "Look, this isn't what it looks like." Eleanor met his eyes. "It looks like timing." That landed harder than yelling would have. Claire's voice shook now. "You don't understand what we're dealing with." Eleanor turned another page in her folder. "Oh, I think I do." She placed several documents on the table. Bank summaries, trust disbursement records, attorney notes. Jason frowned first, then went pale. Claire looked down, read 2 lines, and stopped breathing for a moment. "No," she whispered. Eleanor's voice stayed measured. "For years, Mr. Bennett maintained legal structures designed to provide emergency support without publicity and without humiliating either of you." She tapped one page lightly. "Mr. Bennett covered a business debt exposure tied to you, Jason." Another page. "He stabilized a mortgage shortfall tied to you, and not Claire." Then another. "He intervened more than once to prevent problems from becoming public, collectible, or permanent." Jason's face twisted. "That's not possible." Harold finally spoke. "It is." The room turned toward him. He was still by the chair, still quiet, but no longer diminished. Claire looked at him as if seeing him for the first time in years. "You knew?" she asked. Harold held her gaze. "I knew enough." Jason shook his head. "Why wouldn't you tell us?" Harold's answer came without anger. "Because I wasn't helping you to own you." No one moved. He went on. "I didn't want my help to become a chain around your neck. I wanted you to stand, so I let you keep your pride." Claire's eyes filled before she could stop them. Jason looked like he wanted to argue, but shame had gotten there first. Then Claire asked the question sitting in all of them. "If you knew all this, why did you let this go on?" Harold's face stayed calm, tired, steady. Because if I saved you with money every time, you'd learn nothing except to wait for rescue. He looked at the papers on the table. But this, he said, this is different. His voice dropped lower, calling me a burden, trying to move me aside so your problems could breathe easier. That's not desperation alone. That's character. No one had a defense for that, not a real one. Jason lowered himself into a chair as if his knees had given out. Claire covered her mouth with one hand. Megan looked at the floor, and in that kitchen, with admission forms on the table and old debts spread open beside them, Harold Bennett got back the one thing his children had been taking from him piece by piece. Not money, not control, dignity. Eleanor closed her folder. Mr. Bennett has decisions to make, she said, important ones, about his care, his home, and his estate. Estate. That word changed the room all over again. Jason looked up slowly. Claire wiped her eyes. Harold said nothing, because for the first time, he did not need to rush the truth. It was already doing its work. Then Eleanor slid one final sealed document onto the table. And before either of you asks what happens next, she said, there is one more matter your father has not yet addressed. Harold looked at the envelope. He knew what it was. But his children did not. Not yet. And judging by the fear on their faces, they were finally beginning to understand that losing his trust might be the smallest part of what was coming. No one reached for the sealed envelope. It sat in the middle of the kitchen table like something alive. Claire's eyes stayed on it. Jason kept looking away from it. Megan had gone quiet in the way people do when they realize the room is no longer safe for excuses. Harold stood where he had been standing all along, near the chair, near the table, near the life they had almost signed away from him. Eleanor rested one hand on the envelope. This, she said, is the updated instruction draft your father asked me to prepare this morning. Claire looked up fast. Updated? Eleanor did not look at her. She looked at Harold. He gave the slightest nod. Only then did she open it. Paper slid out. Clean pages. Fresh signatures missing. Blank lines waiting. Jason swallowed. What is it? Harold answered himself. My decision. The kitchen went still again. Eleanor placed the first page on top. Mr. Bennett has the legal right to revise the terms of his trust, his residential arrangements, and who, if anyone, will be responsible for his affairs in the future. Claire's voice came out thin. Dad? But Harold did not look at her yet. He looked at the documents, then out the window, then back at the people he had spent a lifetime protecting. I won't be signing anything you brought into this house, he said. And I won't be moved anywhere like a package with my name on it. No one interrupted. That helped more than an apology would have, because at last they were listening. Eleanor turned another page. Mr. Bennett has chosen to remain in his own home, she said, with licensed in-home support arranged independently. Claire stared. His own home? Eleanor looked up. Yes, his home. Jason frowned, still trying to catch up. I thought this house? It is not yours, Eleanor said. Not harsh, just exact. Claire's lips parted. Jason blinked twice. Eleanor continued. The residence was placed under protected ownership years ago. Mr. Bennett allowed family occupancy and assistance informally. He did not surrender title. Megan slowly lowered herself into a chair. Claire whispered, You let me think. Harold finally turned to her. I let you live here without shame. That hit harder than anything else he had said. Claire sat down as if the strength had gone out of her legs. Jason rubbed a hand over his mouth. So none of this was ours. Harold's eyes stayed on him. No, but I treated you like family, not tenants. That was the difference. Jason dropped his gaze. Eleanor placed a second document on the table. This amendment also changes the distribution structure of Mr. Bennett's estate. There it was. The word nobody had wanted to say too early. Estate. Inheritance. The quiet engine under too many family betrayals. Claire's face tightened with shame before greed could even reach it. That mattered. A little. Jason looked as if he wanted to disappear. Eleanor spoke clearly. Support is no longer automatic. Future distributions, if any, will be discretionary and contingent on conduct, honesty, and demonstrated responsibility. Jason let out a broken breath. Dad, please. Harold stopped him with a look. Not cruel, not loud, just tired. You were ready to decide where I should spend the rest of my life, he said. You were ready to take control before asking what I wanted, so now I am deciding what mine will support. No one argued, because there was nothing weak in him now, only clarity. Claire's eyes filled again. This time, she did not hide it. "I was overwhelmed," she said. "I was scared. I thought if Jason's situation got worse, everything would fall apart." Harold listened. She went on, voice shaking. "That doesn't excuse it. I know that. But I need you to know, I did not start there. I didn't wake up wanting to treat you this way." Harold believed her. That was the cruel part of family. People do not always begin as villains. Sometimes they become cruel one compromise at a time. Jason looked up next. "I kept telling myself I'd fix it before anyone knew," he said. "Then it got bigger. Then I thought if we could just move things around, buy some time." "By moving me?" Harold asked. Jason closed his eyes. That was answer enough. For a long moment, Harold said nothing. The silence hurt them. Good. Some silences are earned. Then he pulled out a chair and sat down at last. Not as a man defeated, as the head of the table. The room shifted around that simple act. He folded his hands. "I'm not cutting you out because you struggled," he said. "People struggle. I know that better than either of you." His gaze moved from Claire to Jason. "I'm changing things because you mistook my silence for surrender. You mistook my help for weakness, and you mistook age for helplessness." No one looked away from him now. That, too, mattered. Eleanor slid the final page forward. "There is one more instruction," she said. Claire wiped her eyes. Jason looked up. Harold spoke before Eleanor could. "A portion of the trust will be redirected." "To where?" Jason asked quietly. Harold's voice stayed even. "To a veterans housing fund and to a legal aid program for seniors who are being pushed, pressured, or displaced by their own families." Megan looked up at that. Claire covered her mouth. Jason stared at his father with a kind of shame that seemed to reach deeper than money ever had. Harold went on. "If what happened in this house can help keep it from happening in another one, then something decent will come out of it." No one had a selfish answer ready for that, because there isn't one. Claire began to cry then, not loudly, not for effect, quietly, the way people cry when the truth has finally cornered them. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry." Jason did not cry. He looked worse than that. He looked like a man finally seeing himself clearly. "I don't deserve help," he said. Harold answered, "No, you deserve consequences." Jason flinched. Then Harold added, after a beat, "and the chance to become better than this." That landed differently. Not mercy, not rescue. A boundary with a door still left cracked. Eleanor capped her pen and gathered the unsigned pages into order. "Nothing will be finalized tonight unless Mr. Bennett chooses," she said. Harold nodded. Then he looked at Claire. "You will have 30 days to make other living arrangements." Claire bowed her head. He looked at Jason. "You will handle your debt without putting my life under it." Jason nodded once. He could not seem to do more. Then Harold said the thing they would remember longest. "I was quiet because I loved you. Do not ever confuse that with having no strength." The room broke after that, not with shouting, with truth. Claire crying into her hands, Jason staring at the table. Megan sitting in silence, all her practical language gone. Eleanor closing the folder because the law had done its part, and now the rest belonged to conscience. Outside, evening had settled over the yard. Inside, Harold rose from the chair and took off his old army coat. He folded it carefully over his arm. For the first time in a long while, it did not feel like armor. It felt like memory. And memory, unlike guilt, did not beg. It simply remained. Harold looked once more at his children. Then he turned to Eleanor and said, calm and certain, "Let's go home." And in the end, Harold Bennett did not raise his voice to be heard. He did something far more powerful. He stood still, told the truth, and took back the dignity his children had tried to file away behind paperwork and excuses. Because a father who suffers in silence is not a weak man. Sometimes he is the strongest person in the room, and sometimes the one they call a burden is the very one who has been carrying everyone else all along. If this story moved you, tell me in the comments. Should Harold have forgiven his children so easily? Or did they deserve even harsher consequences? And if you believe parents should never be treated like they are in the way, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this story today.